Hello and welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us again here today. We've got another great show lined up as usual. Here with us again, as usual, is Sandy Mckay. How you doing, Sandy?
Hey, Rob. I'm amazing. How about you?
Excellent. I couldn't be better. My head's a little sunburned, but and peeling, so that's kind of embarrassing when I go out. But other than that, really good, really good.
Hey, that's the perks of living in a nice new climate, hot climate.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So everyone listening should go over to our website, breakthroughreipodcast.ca. There they can listen to all of our episodes that we've done in the past. They can connect with our past guests, and they can get our free gift.
Yeah, the ultimate strategy for building wealth through real estate, which you can pick up when you join our email list there, and you'll also get access to all of our shows that we host. You'll get notified that they're out there, and you can go check them out. Also, any upcoming events that we got coming, you will be notified, so you never miss out. So go do that, get your free gift, and join in on all the fun.
Yeah, we've been doing some pretty cool virtual Peterborough property tours lately, and they're fun. You know, not as good as being in person, but it's the next best thing, I guess, to it. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting because I think with them, there is some differences. Like we used to have to try to cram everybody into a space and point things out. And this way it's, at certain points in the video, we can stop, we can talk about what we're seeing, and everyone gets the same perspective instead of somebody being at the back of a crowd maybe. So not to take away from that, I mean, just the community that I guess can get built from an actual live tour is not going to be beat by a virtual tour. But like I said, it's the next best thing, right? So you'll learn about those if you sign up to our group too. And Sandy, I'm not sure if you're doing tours, but you're doing informational seminars and things like that, right?
We've got some new stuff coming we're working on. So in the end here of 2021 and into next year, we'll probably have some more events like that happening. We're just kind of finalizing some things around that. So another reason to go check it out, so you can hear about all that, and as we launch some new stuff coming in the next couple months. Currently not doing much, but we'll come back with some new fresh content and some exciting events soon.
And I will just say, since we are in Costa Rica right now, anyone who's interested in that investing here, reach out to me because there's been so many people lately. I would say, at least 5 people in the last 5 days saying they're seriously considering something so they can get away for a little while in this area. So if you're interested in something like that, reach out to me and we'll have a conversation. I'll tell you what's going on here and all the ins and outs of owning property in this area.
It's exciting. I would definitely recommend people to do that because there's all sorts of reasons to maybe spend some more time out of Ontario or BC or wherever you're living. Costa Rica is an awesome spot.
Yeah, it's a different experience here right now for sure. So, Sandy, you just got back from a little vacation?
Yeah, figured out a way to travel around. We were in Hawaii until 2 days ago. So I just got back from there, and we were in Southern California for a bit too on the way out. Yeah, good time to be away. Good time of year, I think. Typically a little slower coming into just before school starts up again and all that sort of stuff. So when you have no kids, it kind of we get an easy opportunity to take away and go enjoy some time. And it was awesome. It was good.
Yeah, you're saying you didn't really look at properties too much in Hawaii, but they are very expensive.
You know what's funny? Yeah, like Southern California, I used to think it was expensive when I'd been there in the past. Going there this time, I was like, man, it is cheap. I can't believe how it's not cheap really, but it's cheap compared to Toronto or anywhere in the GTA. And when there's just such a big surge of pricing here, all of a sudden that area, certainly like San Diego area, does not seem very expensive, which is surprising because it's an amazing place to live, at least weather-wise and other reasons. Hawaii, it's super expensive still. But there's not much for property there either, right? So it's pretty limited, and supply is really low. So and demand, rightfully so, is really high. And But a cool place to own some vacation property. You can do some cool things there. I think Costa Rica, your money's going to go a little farther.
Yeah, could do. I mean, we've got the pricing here is still. I think the entry into this market is definitely a little more doable. But something to consider here is the lending options are very minimal.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that people ask about. And I'm working with some real estate brokers, mortgage brokers, to try and figure out something for this area. But it's tricky. It's tricky to put it together. I think seller financing is still the best option. But I've never been to Southern California. I'd like to check it out. California, anywhere really. I'd like to check it out someday. It's kind of on the wish list.
Yeah,
no, that's good.
Beautiful
good
weather. We had bad weather there for considering the area. It was 21 degrees Celsius and not that sunny, which is pretty much as cold as it gets there.
Yeah, that's not what you're expecting, I'm sure.
Yeah, but
made the best of
spot.
it.
Yeah, for sure.
You got some Ontario weather while you were there. You brought it with you.
Yeah, well, no, because we've been getting rain every day in Ontario. We didn't get rain.
Okay, well, what else?
It wouldn't be a Canadian show without talking about some weather, right?
Yeah, we got to do that. As well, people should go over to iTunes, leave us a rating and review there. It helps us get out there and get exposed to more audience, to a wider group of people who are looking for this kind of information. And there's lots of people looking for, especially now, a way to diversify. Maybe they're in stocks, but a tangible investment opportunity. And I think that this is one of the best. I mean, I certainly don't think I'd be anywhere near where I am without it. I know we wouldn't have this show, so that's something. But anyway, go over, leave us a rating and review if you haven't done that on iTunes, and 5 stars. If you think we deserve it, that always helps. Anything else?
That's about it. I think let's get into our guest here.
Well, I'm very excited to talk to our next guest here today. Waylon McGill. He's here to talk to us about why he chose real estate, why he chose to build a real estate business instead of just being a passive investor. So welcome, Waylon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Long-time listener, first-time guest.
Cool. I'm excited about the topic because a lot of people do talk about passive, and there's some obviously reasons to be attracted to that and great reasons to do it that way. There's also a lot of excitement in growing a real business and running it like more of a business, right? Which I'm sure we'll get into more here. Quick bio and background on you, Waylon. You grew up in Newmarket, Ontario, lived in Toronto, downtown Toronto since 2008, and started investing in real estate with your girlfriend, now wife, just a few years ago. And after purchasing 3 properties, started learning a lot more about wholesaling and that process of funding purchases. So you've done a bunch of that as well, and wholesale 30 properties and added 16 units to your portfolio in just would be under 3 years still, right? So pretty impressive numbers there. It's exciting. So we're looking forward to learning how you did this, and yeah, welcome.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's actually November will be the 2-year anniversary of when I closed on the first property.
2 years. Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty crazy how fast things can happen when you really, focus on what you're doing and, put time in every day.
Okay, well, let's talk about how you got started then, because it sounds to me like you were like shot out of a cannon right out of the gate when you started into this. But was it more like, are you considering the anniversary of the 2 years as when you started taking action? Maybe you'd learned something before that.
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
know.
So yeah, it was probably like June or July 2 years ago. So just over 2 years when I was at a cocktail party or whatever. And I was talking to a friend, and he mentioned how he bought a couple properties in the last couple of years. And it kind of blew my mind that someone was buying multiple properties in just a few years. I knew he had a good job, but like nothing, that's going to allow you to save for a down payment every year. And so I just kind of started asking him questions about it. And from there, that kind of started my journey where I was like, well, if he can do it, there's not any reason why I can't do it either. And I think that's kind of been a big driver of everything I've done is just seeing people who've done more and kind of saying like, well, why not me? But I started basically just like aggressively listening to podcasts. Your guys was absolutely one of them. So it was, a handful of different podcasts I was listening to, probably spending 2 to 3 hours a day on podcasts. You almost feel like the different investors in the investor community when you do that, because you're just like, you've heard them in detail talk about the strategies that they're using. I think a lot of people early on want to reach out to investors and ask them questions, and it's just like, you're kind of wasting people's time if you haven't put your time in first, listening to podcasts, reading blogs and things like that. So I just went super aggressive at the education piece. I went out to networking events, the Right Club. I went actually, Rob, on your property tour, one of those in Peterborough, the live ones. That was actually really good, because I realized on that tour when I was talking to other investors that despite the fact that I had never bought anything yet, that I did know a lot. Like when people were asking questions, I knew the answers, and it was just because I'd listened to other people who know more on podcasts. So that gave me a lot of confidence to actually be like, no, we need to go buy something. And at the time it was my fiance. She had a first time home buyer credit that she was able to use. And so, I was just pitching hard for her to buy something before we got married. And that's kind of how like the action started. So it was like talking her into buying that first property, because I was kind of tapped out. I was saving for a wedding, a ring. I just bought my primary residence a year and a half before. And yeah, that's pretty much how I got started. And then from there, it was just trying to be aggressive and make moves as quickly as possible. So I think a week after we closed on that, we got married. I think 5 days later. And then 2 days after that, we were in a hotel, and a friend who I'd been talking to a lot about real estate sent me a wholesale deal and was like, hey, are you interested in this? And I asked my wife very nicely if it was also my birthday, if I could buy this other property. And she said yes, in a moment of weakness. And so we bought that, and that was a duplex conversion that we did in Brantford. So from there, it's just kind of been trying to take action as quickly as possible. And a lot of it's just like impatience. Everything feels like it's happening really slow. And, even if you're buying, like say someone builds a 20 property portfolio in 10 years, you'd say that's pretty amazing, right? 10 years, you got 20 properties. But that's still only buying a property every 6 months. Like you're closing one property of 6 months. How many days are you not closing on properties, right? So it's still, for me, everything felt slow. So pretty quickly after that, I think a few months after we did the refinance. So we probably refinanced that duplex about 4 months after purchasing. And then I immediately rolled that money into a cottage. And we used that as a rental. So that was like 3 properties in the first 6 months or something like that. And then I was just completely out of money. I didn't have refinance money anymore. And that's kind of what made me think, okay, if I want to keep buying at this pace, I need to find a way to make a lot of extra money in real estate.
So I want to, I guess, dial it back a little bit, right? Because
Yeah.
we're talking about where the education piece, like in that sprang from that party that you were at, I guess. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Like you hadn't really thought about real estate before that, or no?
Yeah, never. I just didn't know anybody who was a real estate investor. And like, my parents are like a nurse and a teacher. So it's, it's pensions and things like that. They're not, and they were always, encouraging me, like, you should always have some savings. You should have several months slush fund and all that stuff. And I completely ignored all of that advice until I was in my, early to mid 30s is when I started thinking like, I better figure out a plan here of how I'm going to have a nice retirement, because I like living well. The more I learned, the more it became clear that like real estate was a way that regular people can become very wealthy versus, stock market. If you don't have a bunch of money, you can't, 25% return on no money is still no money. Right. So real estate, I think, is where people who just work hard and get creative and network can find ways to become pretty wealthy.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on it already, but what is some of the big challenges that you faced starting out?
Yeah, so being impatient was definitely one, like realizing that like sometimes you're building up capacity. right? So, we want success to just kind of be this like nice curve up and to the right. But a lot of times, you make a bunch of moves and then you've got to build up capacity, whether that's knowledge, whether that's the people that what could be finding private lenders. Like you've got to figure out a bunch of stuff in order to take those next steps. And so for me, one of the struggles was just realizing that even though I wasn't buying a property this month and I probably wasn't going to buy one next month, that all of the daily knowledge and networking and everything else was actually building up that capacity. So that was a big part of it early on. Another piece is just how do you, I got married, and part of being married is not just making decisions on your own. So it was like, how do you bring someone along on that journey and get the support of a partner, right? Because not everybody has the same risk appetite, right? And I think that I have a pretty large appetite for risk. I don't mind it. I think that generally that's where all the rewards come from. And a lot of people overestimate the risks of doing stuff and they underestimate the risks of doing nothing. So that was definitely a challenge. I think early on, I was like, how am I going to get my wife to be on board with the types of moves I want to make? And then just a specific one from a property was, we bought this duplex conversion property off a wholesaler, and I was on my honeymoon when we actually got a contractor in, and we never sent somebody in. We sent in a property manager to check out the property, which was a big learning, like send a contractor. Because we found out that all the electrical was knob and tube, and the first quote that we got from an electrician was over $30,000 to remediate that. And that was like a moment of panic where I was like, oh my God, like I made a huge mistake and this deal is going to be terrible. Also, my wife's not going to be happy because as I said, I kind of took advantage in the moment of when I asked her to buy that. So just kind of not freaking out about that was a really important thing. And fortunately, we got a few quotes in. We got a contractor who was going to do it for about $10,000. So that was a lot more manageable, but it was like a really high stress situation and made me think twice about, how into real estate I wanted to get. But it kind of all worked out. Like the duplex conversion worked out. We got, most of our money back. I think we left $26,000 in on a $500,000 appraisal, but in the moment it was very scary. I didn't have a ton of funds. I also bought it entirely with lines of credit. I didn't have, as I said, like I wasn't cash rich at the time. I had a lot of big expenses. So my down payment came from a line of credit. All my renovation budget was going to come from lines of credit. So early on, one of the challenges was just, it's kind of risky. Like if you don't have a bunch of money, but you want to make moves, you've got to take on some risk, which is doing projects with other people's money that you've got to pay back regardless of how things go.
I hear you on the spousal one. We hear that a lot in different, not everyone's on the same page, or not everyone has the same risk tolerance, all the different points you mentioned, right? It's hard to make sure you're still, obviously you have a relationship there to upkeep versus business, and how you all kind of marry those together is always interesting to hear about. But it certainly seems like you got her on the same page after all that, hopefully. And money is a big conversation in relationships, and obviously relationships with partners in business, always a big one. When you hear that $30,000 expense come up out of nowhere sort of thing, what were your next steps coming from that? Like, how did you overcome, like at the start? I've had similar experience too early on, where you hear about these 30 grand is a huge expense early on, typically, if you haven't dealt with that before.
Yeah, absolutely.
What were your next steps when you heard that?
So I think at that point, I just started reaching out to different contractors, electricians. Like we were on our honeymoon. I was in Cozumel, and it was just like making calls from there. But like it ruined a 24-hour period for sure. Like it was panic because, again, it was all lines of credit and stuff. So it's not like I had just money, or, I could just refinance this other property or pull out a HELOC. There was like no additional money sources. So it was just like, try to calm down, and more like, it was like, I was kind of freaking out because I'm like, my wife didn't really want to do this. And I talked her into it, and now like I'm losing the shirt off my back. So it was really just, all you can do is call people, talk to people, see if there's somebody else who can get in and check out for you. Like, so we got a few different electricians in, and we got a more favorable quote, and we just went ahead with that. The wholesaler did give us a bit of a reduction on the property. It wasn't huge. It was nice. It was a nice gesture on their part because they weren't aware of it. But really, you just kind of got to plod through. Like, when stuff like that comes up, like, you can't really change it. You just gotta like, move forward. So we did that, and the deal worked out amazingly, right? I think that one of the great things about real estate is it's very forgiving. What looks like an okay deal this year will probably look like an amazing deal in 3 years. The odds of you kind of going to zero on a project, like you could if you're in the wrong stock or something like that, is pretty low. So it was just kind of realizing, like, okay, maybe we won't get the refinance we want. Maybe we'll leave more money in the property than we wanted to, but at the end, we'll still be okay. And in 2 or 3 years, this will still look like a great deal. And I just heard people say that on podcasts. And I think that was really what helped me stay calm throughout it. Was after that first 24 hours was, this is going to look like a great deal in 3 years. Like, it looks kind of crappy now, but it's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's certainly, it's good to hear that in a way, because it's we talk to a lot of people. It's all, happy and easy stuff going on. There's a lot of challenges early on. I find more so, because every little challenge is a huge thing early on. So, being on your honeymoon, I couldn't imagine that the conversations having, not even being able to be local or go see what's going on, just be, a phone calls away, and having to sort all that out would be a fun time. But you learn a lot through those, right? Those are all moments to learn and grow. And the next time that happens, it's a lot less scary, for sure.
Yeah, we had some issues come up on a flip we're doing now, and unfortunately, it's kind of a lesson I've had to learn in 2 different ways. But I bought this property when I was in Mexico, and we had a contractor check it out, which I learned from the first time. Don't get a property manager, you need a contractor, get a realistic quote. But we didn't send a realtor with what I learned is, like, we should be giving a checklist to a realtor. Like, if we're not going to go see a property that we're buying, which is frequently, we can't just say, hey, realtor, check out this property and, tell me if you think it's good or whatever. Like, give me some details on, what you think we can do with it. What's the land like? Is it good? Is it a good property, and all these other things? Because we bought another property, and it's not going to be a great flip because there's some stuff that we didn't do enough due diligence on. And that's one of the things where, if you want to move fast, you are occasionally going to break stuff. And it's not as big a deal if you've got some successes under your belt, you've got some money in the bank, you've got some access to capital and things like that. So it's a lot easier now, but I'm still making mistakes. None of them are irreparable, but I still do. And so it's great in that way that you're consistently learning. So it keeps it exciting.
Actually, that's a great point with working with realtors. I know Rob and I both are realtors. It's on us in a way to help you as an investor come up with those questions that we should have answered, and that way it helps us do our job a lot easier. But great, there's nothing better than talking with an investor and then having a really easy to follow list of, hey, here's what I'm looking for, this is what I need help with, go do your thing and help us find this. Like, that's a much better client for us to work with, and much easier to work with all around, versus, hey, I'm just looking for a duplex, I don't know if I just want to make money on a duplex. Like, that's very vague, right, in terms of the scope, and it's a lot more difficult to find you end up wasting a lot of each other's time finding out what that property could look like, because there's so many variations of it. But anyways, the more detailed you can get on that, the better and easier for everyone to take action.
I think you made a really good point there in saying that just because you had heard other people talk about, these catastrophic reno things that have happened to them in the past before it happened to you, it kind of gave you a perspective on, okay, they seem to have gotten through it and they kept going. Because I believe that the stories that you hear of the people that have quit after something like that, which there's probably many, right, would be because they haven't had that kind of community or nowhere to gain a perspective on it, right?
Yeah, totally. I think immersing yourself in the real estate community is so important. And most of the success I've had would be a result of that in one way or another, whether it's, partnering up with someone, through the community to start a business, or, getting networked with the right mortgage brokers that can get you 100% loan to value on your purchases. Like, all the things kind of came out of networking. And the way that I was able to bring value networking early on, that I guess people would talk to me, maybe they wouldn't have talked to as many investors that were as junior, was because I just listened to like every podcast episode I possibly could. Maybe I didn't know something from experience, but I could say, oh, this investor who they were aware of, on this podcast, they said this, right? So I was still able to add value to conversations just from other people's experience that I was kind of like co-opting as my own knowledge. But that was super helpful. Those relationships kind of have been everything. So I would say to people, like, really immerse yourself in the community. Also, if you're just surrounded by people who are doing amazing stuff, you're going to realize that, like, not everybody who has 100 properties is a genius. And not everybody who owns 100 properties is working 100 hours a week. A lot of it is just devoting consistent time every day or 5 days a week to the goals and to the right behaviors that tend to get results. Networking, I think, is something that, we could probably put thousands of dollars per hour return on investment for every hour I've spent networking. But that was really inspiring early on, is like talking to people and being like, oh, this is just a regular person. Like, they don't, I'm sure they are smart, right? But like, they don't have to be a genius. And it was like, wow, everyday people can become wealthy through real estate. It's just most people don't make that first move. They never kind of get off the couch and take action. But if everybody around you is, odds are you'll start taking action too.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Same with any like celebrity, right? In life, people put them on a bit too much of a pedestal at times, and you forget that they're just humans at the end of the day. That was one of my big ahas early on too, is that everyone who owns 100 plus stores, like you said, is not necessarily a genius. Sometimes they're not very bright at all, actually, but they've taken action and become maybe a little smarter in that space over time. But they've mostly just taken action. That's the one thing that basically all those people have in common. They've taken action. And gone through some tough times probably, and just kept going.
Yeah, I think that's 100%. It's just like, really, it's just how much action you take will be reflected in what you build. And just like I said, like 2 properties a year for 10 years is a 20 property portfolio. That's a very nice portfolio. That doesn't mean that you have to spend all day, every day on real estate. You probably have to do it early on in terms of getting your education, hitting that critical mass where you know what you're doing, where people are going to lend you money and things like that. But once you've hit that point, I don't think it needs to be like an all day, everyday thing, but it's amazing what, consistent action over a significant period of time can turn into.
So what type of properties are you investing in now?
So I'm kind of doing a bunch of everything. I know everybody, like early on when I was getting into it, everybody's like, pick something and specialize. But I think that the opportunity to pick something and specialize is kind of past, right? Like, there's just not, 5 years ago, there'd be a bunch of duplex conversion properties on the Hamilton Mountain or wherever else that you could go see on the MLS that would make great duplex conversions. I think if you're too specific in your requirements now, you're going to find yourself just not really buying anything. And when you're not buying, you're also not gaining experience. So I've been really flexible in terms of what I will buy as long as the numbers work. So I bought turnkey triplex with a boarding house in it. I bought, done a duplex conversion, cottage rental. This year we've picked up 16 units so far with primarily small multifamily, like a 6 unit, an 8 unit. Going forward, like next year, we want to kind of live more in that space of small to medium sized multifamily. And I'm doing that with my business partner, Austin Ye. So we run a wholesaling business together, and we do a lot of acquisitions together. And a lot of it's just kind of been, here's a great deal, and nobody seems to see the potential in it or want it. So we'll just close on it ourselves, renovate, refinance. So we got, a renovation just started actually yesterday on a 6-plex. So we got it entirely vacant, and we got contractors who are doing a flip for us in Hamilton, basically living in Sudbury for a few weeks. They're going to renovate 1 unit. We'll convert that into an Airbnb. They're going to live there and renovate the rest of the units. So that's kind of where we want to go, is buying more of that stuff. So we're going to be looking to take on more JV relationships. Typically, we just want private money. We'd rather pay high interest rates and keep 100% of the property. But I think to scale more aggressively next year, if we want to pick up like 100 units, that's probably easier to do some of that with JV partnerships. So that's kind of the move going forward, and then just cherry picking flips and things like that in the meantime.
Cool. So
that was a lot. That was a lot in there.
I think.
Yeah,
So I was just gonna say, doing a lot of different stuff, it just keeps things exciting. Like for me, the thrill as much of anything is just learning how to do something, doing it, and having it work. There's like a nice dopamine hit on that. So I really like to just learn about something and then be like, okay, like let's just do it and figure it out as we go.
What's it mean to be?
Go ahead, Sandy.
What's it mean to be building, like, all the different things you're doing there? You're building a business versus just buying something and letting it ride for 20 years. You're building a real business in this that's going to be, I assume, more scalable and growing a business versus being very passive. What's the difference in that, and why did you go down that route versus kind of the more traditional methods of investing in real estate?
So I think a lot of it is just like changes in the market and rents and things like that and cash flow. Like when I started, I was like, oh, I just want to build like $50,000 a month in cash flow, and then I'll retire and live a great life. And then, and I was listening, like I said, I was listening to a ton of podcasts. The problem is those podcasts were from 2 years ago and 3 years ago, from when I started, when people were cash flowing $1,000 or $1,500 on duplexes and triplexes. And now it's like, maybe you're cash flowing $500. So how realistic is it that I'm going to burr 100 duplexes to get that $50,000 cash flow? So it's kind of realizing that cash flow was drying up, that appreciation was happening to the point that the cash flow was becoming less relevant. So it's like, I just think it's not very realistic for most people to live off cash flow. If you want, like, I want to live in downtown Toronto. I want to have a house in downtown Toronto. I want to have a nice cottage in Muskoka. I'd love to have a vacation property in Tulum or Costa Rica or something like that. So that's not going to be cheap. And I'm probably not going to get there through rental income alone. So it was like, how can I, one, buy more properties because I've got more active income, but two, just a recognition that the quality of life that I want or the type of life I want is probably never going to get paid for with cash flow, at least not in the meantime, unless I build a business that helps me scale how quickly I can buy.
Yeah, that sounds good, man. That sounds good. Sorry, I'm distracted here because my computer's going to die on me. So I was just getting my son to bring me a charger. That and this pool started up here and it was making a bunch of noise.
I was gonna say previous. Everyone who's not watching us, they're still just listening. They got to come check out us live. Some of these shows to see your nice backyard, watch you run around at times during the show. And I don't know what you're doing there, but we had a nice view of the pool there for a bit.
My apologies. Instead of my head, yeah. I can move back out of the way if you want.
I think maybe on the edit, you guys could throw in some Benny Hill music as Rob runs around the pool, fixing shit back there.
Yeah, that was good.
I just had to turn it off because it got really loud. But I mean, this is obviously really interesting. And one of the things that I think that sort of Sandy and I forget to do after we talk about the big challenges that people have is talk about some of the really big successes that they've had as well. So maybe you can tell us about some recent successes, something that stands out to you.
Yeah. So I actually just sold my first flip. So Rob is actually the agent on the flip. After I went on the property tour, I just kind of stayed in touch with Rob, and he was always just like super helpful. If I sent him a request and asked for like comps or something like that, he would help me out. So I ended up buying a property. It was off a Google ad I placed, and I bought this really distressed property. It was a lot more distressed than I thought at first. Actually, we found out that it was just like the walls were rotted out, the ceiling was rotted out. It'd been vacant for 2 years. So I was expecting to go in and do like 3 months, $50,000 flip. It ended up taking about 7 months and $150,000. But I was really happy with every decision I was making as I was making them. And as I, did some elements of the house nicer, it became clear that I couldn't just leave this other element. I had to redo all of that. But we ended up basically, I staged it, and then we put it up, and 8 days later we held offers, and I think we got 7 offers, including one for 130 over asking. So that was amazing. So I think profit margin there on that deal was around $190,000. I recognize that that's not going to be every flip, but I do think that there's some elements of the model and the property type that were that are repeatable. And so that's definitely something I'm going to look to do, is pick up properties that are a similar profile to that. And I just think that in sort of these semi-rural markets, I don't think many people are doing really nice flips, and really nice flips don't necessarily have to cost that much more money. Some of it's just design choices. I think a lot of flippers are kind of, they're painting walls beige. Nobody wants a beige wall, and nobody has for a very long time. But it's a lot of it's just like contractors or things like that, where they can do the work a bit cheaper, but they don't necessarily have an eye for design. So I think if you can do really nice properties in semi-rural areas, that there's a lot of people out there that want something like that, and there's just nothing that comes to market that really fits that description.
That's a good point. I agree with that, especially now, right? Especially during COVID times, and probably for the next, probably indefinitely. That's a great market to look at. I agree. Semi-rural, where there's just not as much action. And I agree too. I can't find much out there like that. You're the only one that stands out in those markets. You're gonna get a premium.
Yeah, I think people are looking for a little more land. Sorry, a little more inclusion, and just a little more breathing room, right? So that's an interesting idea, and I think that you're right. The other thing that I just wanted to point out is that it took me quite a while to realize what you've realized just in the one flip, is that I used to have the mentality of whatever I can get away with not fixing, let's make sure that I do that, right? But I think it's really important, especially, it's nice to have a nice product if you're going to sell it. That's no one would dispute that fact. But if you're going to keep something and refinance it, as soon as you've done that, really, if you haven't done the right repairs and the right renovations, as soon as things come up to start getting fixed and repaired, those capital expenses now, you can't roll them into the refi anymore. So it's one of the things that I think is interesting to point out, is just that, if you can get stuff taken care of now before the initial refi, that's always the best time to get it done. And it makes it prettier. It makes it more rentable if you're keeping it. So there's all kinds of benefits to doing that.
Yeah, I think a lot of stuff that you see out there is people kind of promoting this, like what you can get away with. And I think that's fine. And it depends on your model. But I think that right now, there's a shortage of great deals, right? For me, I view, and even my job, or not my job, I have a job. My business is to find great deals. And it's harder to find great deals now than it was 6 months ago. It's way harder to find great deals than it was a year ago. So if you've got a bottleneck at the deal finding stage, and I think almost every investor does, you want to try to squeeze as much value out of each deal as possible. So to go in and be like, hey, we're just going to do, 50 flips a year with $40,000 profit margin per flip. It's going to be really tough for you to find 50 great deals. What if you just did 15 or 20 deals, but you instead of getting $40,000 or $50,000 profits, you were getting, 70 or 80, right? It's also a lot less work to manage half as many flips. So I think that people kind of underestimate the benefit or the value that you can get with really good design. It doesn't cost that much more money. A nicer color of luxury vinyl plank than some of this gray stuff that people are using. It doesn't cost significantly more money, but your finished product looks a lot better. And if you do everything, the buyer feels like they don't have to buy anything when they show up. There's nothing for them to fix, right? And think for them, they can't roll that into a mortgage either. All right, some can. They need purchase plus improvements, but I don't think it's very well known. So someone might have $80,000 or $100,000 for a down payment, but they don't have $40,000 to do the stuff that you forgot to do. They could have paid $540 instead of $500 if you just spent the extra money and fixed that stuff for them.
True. I agree. I find lighting's a really easy one that most people skip over. Just a little bit higher quality lighting fixtures the appearance is it's like jewelry for the house almost, right? It's
right.
why put on this little rubber band thing that I got on versus like a nice, whatever you want to call it, a nice watch that's whatever, something a little more higher end. You don't have to spend thousands more, but it's $100.
Well, I don't know. I think you'd have to probably spend thousands more to get something nicer than that rubber band there. But I understand your point. Yeah, like when people talk about wow factors, they mostly talk about kitchens and bathrooms, right? But lighting is an important one. If you can get people to wow when they walk into a dining room, that's sort of completely different than what most people might say, right? Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I think too the other thing just to consider is just in the quality of finishes. Like so much of your cost is going to be the labor. The incremental cost of nice lighting in your kitchen versus super basic lighting might be $300, right? But you could have like some state pendants that make a statement over your island for a total of $500 or $600 versus a piece of crap that's $150, and they both cost the same amount of money to install. So like, I think the return on that is really high, but again, it's one of those areas where people are they're more concerned about cost than they are about value and profit.
All right. So you talked about it. Well, actually I'm going to ask you where your business is going in the future, because I know that's exciting. You've kind of touched on it, but first I want to talk about, since we were saying it's difficult to find the deals, how do you find them then?
We spend a ton of money to find deals. Like, we have a 5-figure monthly marketing budget, and that's through, and if we include bird dogs, it's like probably, fees that we're paying to people who bring us deals. We're probably, well over that. But basically we do a combination of, we do mail, we do Google ads, we do ads on Kijiji, we do referrals. We kind of do everything. And then as you build a brand, people will bring you deals, and part of it is we work with a lot of junior wholesalers who are just kind of getting into the business. And one of the things that we also do frequently is, like, if we get a bird dog deal and it doesn't move to our buyers list, there's a good chance that we'll just buy it ourselves. So we give a pretty favorable split to the junior wholesalers in terms of the profits that they get from the deal. We're typically able to get them a bigger profit that they could get if they could sell it themselves, even if they could sell it themselves, which right now is tough. Investors are very cautious these days. I think that everybody saw the appreciation. Everybody's a bit scared about what might happen next. So people's buying requirements seem to have really tightened up. So that's something that we're really focused on, is building a network of people who are out there searching for deals for us all the time, and they get paid very well for it. And then we've got 4 full-time wholesalers working for us now as well. So we're sending out tons of mail for them. Again, the website stuff. So just like lots of different channels. I think that everybody, when they get started, they want to know what works. Everything works, right? Everything works. Everything's just really hard. So I think if you want to start wholesaling now versus a year ago when I started, it's way harder to get started. You're going to probably spend 3 times as much to get a deal as you would have spent a year ago. You might need to have $20,000 ready to go and willing to spend every dollar to find your first deal. If you're going to go with the marketing route versus things like door knocking or things like that, where you kind of find a distressed property and go see if the owner's looking to sell. But everything works. You just have to do it at a really large volume and get really good at how you talk to people.
When you deal with at scaling that, how do you deal with the inquiries that come in? Who deals with that? Is that you directly, or is it a team of people? How does that typically look like?
Yeah, so at first I did all of it. Like I did all the seller communication myself, but I have a full-time career. It's a very good career that I don't plan on leaving anytime soon. So I do have limited time. So it was like fairly quickly realized that if I wanted to blow this up, I couldn't do it alone. Like I mentioned before, I partnered up with Austin Ye, who's an amazing young investor. He's been on your show. But I partnered with him. He took over the operational side of things. So I didn't have to do anything but actually get the properties under contract. And then it was, okay, now I'm going to hire people and I'm going to teach them how to do what I do. And I've got, close to 15 years of sales experience, leading, semi-large sales organizations at tech companies and things like that. So I'm pretty good at how to build a sales team, how to establish a culture, training, negotiation, all that stuff. So now I don't really take any seller calls. I go in if there's like a high leverage situation that we need a favorable outcome on. like a neighbor who might be suing in a flip situation or something like that, then that's like where I'll step in and I'm the one who's going to have that conversation. But it's been good in terms of being able to offload a lot of stuff. I think if you want to build a business, you basically have to kind of master something or close to mastery anyways, and then hand that off to somebody else. And then you're like, okay, what's the next thing in the business that we need to do that can help us scale? Okay, figure it out, hand it off to somebody else. And that's kind of the process that I've been going through for the last maybe 9 months since we really started doing this as a proper business.
Awesome. So is that somewhere in that conversation was the Ontario property deals? I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's yeah. So Ontario property deals. That's our company that sells deals to other investors. So we probably at this point I think we're probably sending out 7 or 8 deals a month, which is kind of crazy because getting your first deal just seems so daunting. But people can go to our website. They can sign up to our buyers list. We sell properties all over Ontario. We do a lot of stuff in Northern Ontario, like Sudbury, North Bay, because that's a favorable entry point for a lot of investors where you can buy a duplex for, a couple $100,000 or a little bit over, prices that someone could get in Windsor a couple of years ago that, you're just not getting anymore. So we do a lot of stuff up there, but we have reps in individual territories, Southwestern Ontario, Durham, Peterborough area, and we've got someone in the Barrie, Innisfil type area. So we have deals all over, and we do as good a job as anybody, I think, in terms of giving as much detail on the property as possible and making sure the transactions run smoothly, which, wholesale deals do have some complications. Sometimes you're dealing with unreliable people, and the sellers specifically. The buyers can be troublesome at times as well, but we kind of manage the whole process and we educate pretty well our clients on how everything's going to go. So it's been going good. I think we're building a pretty good brand with it, and getting some repeat business as well.
Yeah, that's impressive. So how many people would you say you have handling the caller leads?
We have 4 currently. And I think that we can scale pretty big with 4 people just in terms of getting them, once they are better at what they do, their conversion rates are going to go up and we're going to feel more confident spending more money per month on marketing for them. So there are 4 people who are full-time, but then Austin for us runs our Bird Dog program. So we educate people who want to get into real estate investing, want to get into wholesaling, but they don't really know how. And to be honest, it is really hard. Like I said, I'm pretty experienced in sales and had quite a lot of real estate knowledge by the time I started. It's really tough to do it without support. But we've had several Bird Dogs be really successful with us who've made over 6 figures so far in fees working with us for like less than 6 months. And, it's not necessarily people who are making that in another career, right? They're making a lot more money just working kind of part-time, scoping out properties for us and getting great deals under contract.
The site you mentioned, there's a website for people to go to. What's the website? If someone, I know there's people out there that are going to want to know how to find these deals. How do they access that?
So it's OntarioPropertyDeals.ca. And there's just there you can enter your information, the types of deals you're interested in, whether or not you're interested in private lending and that sort of thing. If people are interested in private lending, we do offer pretty good returns when we do that, or the people that have worked with us at least have got really good returns. But primarily you're just signing up to get access to deals. If you do want to lend, we're open to that as well. But for us, it's mostly about trying to build that business up and helping other investors build their portfolios as well.
Okay, that's awesome. Congratulations on the success there too, because that's not an easy thing to do. Well, I shouldn't say it. It's like you said, it's intimidating, especially when you start out, right? So you go in, and like you said, these people who don't have all the experience, they might not know what to say to a seller when they get in there. So it's just really interesting how you're taking all these people and giving them an education in real estate investing, and they're going to be able to build their wealth over time too, and maybe even be able to follow in your footsteps, right?
Yeah, that's the idea. Like, we want everybody who works for us to get the same sort of freedom through real estate that we're after ourselves. I think you don't want to be at the top by yourself. And I think just as you get older, the impact that you have on others becomes more important. And like, becoming really successful in real estate is a personal goal, but it's also a personal goal to help other people I know, either already, friends, family, to achieve those things, but also people I don't know who just have hustle. people who want to go after it. And I really respect that. And we want to give them the tools to be successful. So you can bird dog for us, make a bunch of money, and then use those same skills that you learned to, and the money that you earned to close on your first rental property. So one of our bird dogs, he closed on his sixplex not too long ago. And I imagine that some of the nice fees he's been making through bird dogging were a big part of that. And obviously he found the deal using the same strategies. So it's been pretty cool. And to have that much impact on people is just really, it's rewarding.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Congratulations on all that, by the way. So where do you see your business going now in the next, let's just talk the next year.
The next year. So I think we kind of view our wholesaling business in part as an acquisitions for ourselves as well. So we do want to do more flips. I don't have a number on it, but we do want to do some. We'll probably do them on properties that don't sell. But we want to acquire 100 units next year is kind of the goal. In order to do that, we're going to have to wholesale quite a few properties so that we've got enough capital. We're going to have to take on more investors and in some cases JV partners. But the goal would be, maybe do 100 deals next year through wholesaling and then pick up 100 units. And I think, if we do that for a few years, that's pretty considerable business scale that we'll have. And who knows, maybe at that point I'll be interested in something else. I do tend to get bored of things, but right now it's just let's see if we can blow it up.
Awesome. That sounds amazing.
Cool.
And all the best on that.
Thanks, Rob.
Last thing we're going to get to before we ask how people can get in touch with you, and you can leave all your info for us as well, because I'm sure there's people that are definitely going to want to hear the best ways to get in touch with you. What motivates all of this? What are your personal goals in your life? What are you trying to get to?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things I mentioned before is I want to have a nice house. I don't want to have to leave Toronto. I love the city. I think that everybody kind of resigns themselves to the fact that you just can't afford it. And I just don't ascribe to that way of thinking. I think that other people have figured it out. Other people can afford to buy those houses. So I want to figure out how I can buy those houses. So I want to have nice property here. I want to have a nice vacation home in Canada, Muskoka. I already have one, but it's not quite what I want. That's more of a rental. And then someplace out of country, I want to be able to travel. So I'm inspired by trying to live a life that to me is just full of always doing awesome stuff where you're just I'm excited about what I get to do today. So that's kind of I think the big thing. And then just having that ability to only do whatever I want, I love my career, working in tech sales and being able to have an impact on salespeople and help them achieve their goals. It's really rewarding. But if I decide, I'm bored of this, I don't want to do it anymore. I want to not worry about the fact that I'm giving up a big salary and just be whatever. I've got all these other logs in the fire in real estate and I only do what I want. Maybe I just do luxury flips now because I'm really into design and that sort of thing. So a lot of it's motivated by that sort of freedom to do things. I don't think I'm overly materialistic. I don't want a bunch of possessions, but I just want nice places to be. And I want to be able to if I could have those places and be yeah, family, come over and we're just going to have a catered thing or whatever, because you've done well enough that you're able to kind of elevate the lifestyle of people around you as well.
Yeah. Help them enjoy it. And which in turn, helps you enjoy your life. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned this right at the top of the show that you said you've been listening to the show for a while. It's your first time on. So we're going to take this opportunity to say that there's a bunch of stuff that we didn't get to here. And we'd love to talk to you in the future. I'm sure we will be. So
yeah, that'd be amazing. Hopefully in a year, I've got entirely new things to talk about. Everything I said today will be old news. That's what my hope is. But yeah, it'd be amazing to come back in a year or two and talk about what we've been able to accomplish since then.
Yeah, you go buy 100 units or sell 100 wholesale deals or something like that next year. There'll be a lot of lessons learned, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which would be great to catch up again.
Yeah. So how is it that people would be best to get in touch with you?
So I think the best ways are probably Instagram and LinkedIn. If you're more of a white collar worker, I'm on LinkedIn. There's a bit less noise on LinkedIn. So happy to connect with people on there. And then Instagram, just, request a connection. I've got an open profile. Shoot me a message. I do try to get back to people. It might be just to tell you to go listen to a podcast if you're asking me about something. But I do try to get back to people. I think it's important because I was fortunate that people got back to me early on and gave me the time of day. So I try to do the same for others.
Mm-hmm. And what's the Instagram handle?
Oh, Waylon McGill.
Just
Waylon McGill.
at Waylon McGill. WAYLONMCGILL.
Nailed
There
it.
you go. Well, all that is going to be in the show notes too. So people that aren't able to stop, write it down or whatever right now can just click into the show notes on the website and they'll be able to get in contact with you right away. Well, again, really appreciate you taking the time today. Thanks so much for sharing all this. And Sandy, how can people get in touch with you?
289-389-6846 or sandy@mckayrealtynetwork.com.
And people can reach me at rob@mrbreakthrough.ca. Well, thanks, guys, for listening. Again, you have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful September month or whatever it is that you're listening to this. And it might not be September, but whatever month it is, have yourself a wonderful month. And we'll see you next time.